Let me get started. What are your primary roles in the film industry? And then do you have other roles in addition? So maybe Allie, we start with you, and then Ryan, you can come in with yours.
Okay. Well, I have two, I guess, parts of myself in the film industry. There's me as a film worker, and then me as a filmmaker. And I went to San Francisco State University to get an MFA in cinema, and kind of spent my time there working in post-production. So after graduation, I did a lot of work in sound editing, working with Michael Kirchberger, who's the sound supervisor in San Francisco, who's really the first person, well, not the first actually, one of the first people to give me an actual paid job that led to, that was working as an apprentice sound editor on a film called Casanova back in 2005 with Heath Ledger. And that led to my joining IATSE Local 700. From there, I worked as an editor on reality television for ESPN. I've worked as a visual effects editor at Tippett Studios in Berkeley, California. So I kind of bounced around sound and picture editing, but always making my own films on the side. And that really has been my primary drive, is not to be a film worker, but to be a filmmaker. So I've also taught along the way. So I'm a film professor, actually going up for full professor today, submitting materials by 11:59 p.m. So I teach filmmaking to the next generation of media makers, storytellers, and I love that equally. So I don't know, I'm sort of all over the place, but I don't freelance much over the past 10 years because I focused on teaching and making my own work.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Ryan, what about you?
So in the narrative film area, visual effects supervisor is probably my primary role, editor as well. In terms of my day to day, I work as a video producer for an in-house marketing agency. So I do a lot of the same things, a lot of heavy on the video editing, and kind of where I get to incorporate my visual effects chops in there occasionally. But then so when I'm working on projects like Incognita or other feature projects or music video projects, I'm a lot of times doing the editing and visual effects for those.
Awesome. Thank you. And like, feel free to speak from the other job. You said you were at a marketing company doing their videos.
So I'm at a musical instrument company, in-house marketing. I lead that marketing team, and I'm the lead video producer for that team too.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow. Yeah, and again, feel free to speak from
Yeah.
both these for both of you from all these places, because the idea is also like I would look at, these texts, and a lot of them are talking about feature fiction with big budgets and big
Mm.
stars. And that's fantastic. I want to
Mhm,
use those books, but the vast majority of my students are probably not going to end up doing that. And
Mhm.
so
mhm,
I wanted something that had some other types of career options so people didn't feel like, oh, well, that's the goal. And if I don't get to that goal, then my career means nothing, and so we want, like, because all these careers, we want jobs, people need paychecks and things like that too. So,
mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
um, okay. So the next one, which of your credits in post or visual effects or any other role are you most like excited by and proud of?
Mm. Beyond Incognita, I mean, this Incognita's Infamous Adventures was like an 8-year project that brought together so many different people. Like me and Ryan was a student in the program I teach in, but he graduated before I got there. And it was so cool to meet Ryan and work with him on this. But also our co-producers, Sarah and Christopher Bailey, were just really incredible at bringing a whole bunch of people together. So I think making Incognita was one of my favorite experiences, like being on set with everyone. And then the editing process, and the COVID hit right as we locked the final edit. And Ryan happened to be there just in time to save us. We were able to pay him something to make up for lost work during the pandemic. And I don't know. So anyways, making Incognito was my favorite. But right now I'm finishing a feature documentary about a friend of mine who's a LGBT Christian who, anyways, I know we've seen a lot of those movies, but this is her personal journey here in Middle Tennessee to uh, coming to terms with her faith and her family and trying to have a baby. Anyways, interesting.
Wow.
That's what I'm really excited about next.
Wow. Congratulations on finishing that too. I remember last time I saw UVFA, we talked about that a little bit.
Great. Oh, I'm so close. Another 8-year project. I'm
Ah,
ready to make something in a weekend though.
very
Too
fun.
too long.
All right, Ryan, for you. Proud and excited.
All right. So I'm going to be predictable because there's hands down Incognita's Infamous Adventures is my proudest work. I mean, I have it at the top of my website. It's just I'm absolutely, that's the coolest project I've ever worked on. And the amount that we got to do with it, the amount of storytelling we got to do through the post-production process was really unique and engaging. It engages kind of beyond that technical creative aspect of just making visual effects to order, just kind of like, like a visual effects barista on one hand is sometimes the way you feel. But for Incognita, it was really getting to do the art side of it, and come up with ways to complete the story and grow the world through the visual effects. So definitely that's my proudest accomplishments. I'll try to say a couple others. The I had a I got connected to Incognita through Carla Cristina Contreras, and that the project where I first got to work with her directly was a project that I produced in a weekend called Watch the Skies. It was a post-apocalyptic Nashville was the premise that I came to the script with, and doing that, it was a fun way to really once again bring storytelling more into the visual effects. When I set out to create something like that, I was really thinking back to the original like Planet of the Apes movies, and when I first saw that as a kid and saw like that shot with the Statue of Liberty, and the how simple that matte painting work is, but at the same time how iconic and impactful. I was trying to do some of the same things, but with my hometown of Nashville, just kind of as part of the scenery, and so doing that was another beautiful moment in kind of the artwork that I've been able to do, and then a music video I did with longtime collaborators and one like my best friend in the world, called Fancy Dancing, would probably be a third on that list, just kind of all-time favorites.
Wow, that's awesome.
I want to second something that Ryan mentioned, the fact that Ryan, you really created a lot of these worlds. And I remember in Incognita, and I think he just went so above and beyond with that because I was a director on that project, and my job was to take what was inside Sarah's brain and put it onto the screen. And she had this idea, she had a crystal ball that was part of her character. And Sarah and I had talked about like what the ball has powers when she touches it. So what does that look like? But also we created an entire city based on Nashville called Big Pond City. And we had no idea what that looked like either. So we were like, Ryan, make something. And I had talked to Ryan about character. I don't know. I don't even know what I told you, Ryan, but you made up like an entire world and the magic that made it happen. I mean, there are some scenes too in this movie, Melanie, where we filmed 3 different years in the same scene. And some of those, like in Worth Dying For, Ryan, remember, some of it was shot in a studio with a black curtain, and then the rest was shot on green screen, and you can't tell. 3 different years too, cut together because we had no money because we're an independent production. So Ryan not only like created the world, but made it seamless, which I thought, I mean, for 60 grand, which is what it cost us to make a 70-minute feature length
That's
film.
amazing. And I have seen it. I saw it at UVFA,
That's
and
right. I forgot you were in the audience
I
there.
did. I rewatched some clips of it too. And yeah, seamless. I'm like, you were talking about it. I'm like, I can't believe you did that with no money. This is
With no money.
incredible.
Yeah. I mean, some money, but a lot of, I mean, and this was totally self-funded. I think we tried really hard to find investors. We had a meeting with like local dentists. I mean, we really scraped by, but, and since we've been performing the show live with the cast, we've met people who along the way, just random people who've come out of audiences going, this is so good, and I want to invest in season 2. So people have donated at screenings, which I thought has been, I mean, who does that? That's that's pretty
Incredible.
cool.
That's great. And great for the cast too. How exciting. Well, let's go to you, Ryan. What is your favorite aspect of post-production? Because it sounds like you do a lot of it.
It very much in line with my last answer. I think that finding that thread of story and how you can bring it out with the things that you're creating or putting together in post-production. I've often I come from a theatrical background in terms of just doing community theater all through like just growing up and really loving to be involved in those things. And I've often compared editing to acting. It's just like you're gonna get a script in when you're a performer, you're going to get a script and your job is to deliver those lines, not changing the lines, but delivering those lines in such a way that it adds subtext and depth. And I think that the same thing is true for editing. You're going to get footage, and so you're not changing what goes on in the footage. Well, in visual effects maybe, but you're not really changing what was captured, but the way you deliver that, everything from the pacing to like the things that you do to emphasize an aspect of a shot, through both timing and the changes that you make in framing and in visual effects, the changes that you make there, those change everything about how the story's tone and the story's just delivery and impact on the audience. I think that's my favorite part of post-production, is that we're still involved in that story, and in a way that is not you're not dredging up. It's not like writing, where you're starting with a blank page, but you have all of these other elements and all of this, like this other performance, and all of these technical things have already come into place and artistic things have come into place, but then you get to have a role in that, in shaping how that story impact someone. And that's what I really love.
I love it. I literally just finished a chapter that said, like, editing and creativity are not about limitless blank pages. They're about working within limits. It's
Yeah.
like literally what you just said. I love it.
Yes.
It's that I find more and more too. Allie, what is your favorite part of post?
Aw. Well, I'll just say, Ryan, my background's in musical theater too. I like grew up as a child actor on stage. I had no idea. I didn't know that about you, but it's so funny how we
It's
all have
it's
that.
like there's something that has brought us together, that's a
Yeah, I
common thread
know.
or
We're like the
something.
theater kids that are like, let's put on a show.
Right.
Anyways, my favorite part of post-production, I started editing on 16 millimeter, like flatbed days. I really, I love, hate it, but I miss that, the thoughtfulness and the slowness of editing. I transitioned like second year of grad school. I think I learned Final Cut 2, and then I cut my thesis on Final Cut 2 in my closet. And like that was revolutionary in that I could hit undo. Um, God, I'm sounding really old, right? But I'm not even 50 yet.
I started
Um,
a reel to reel, if it makes you feel any better.
yeah,
Real
right.
video, like
Oh,
hit,
I remember that. In, out,
yeah,
execute. Like, dang it, I forgot the enable the audio tracks, right? On that little, anyways,
yeah.
I feel your pain with that. That I don't miss. But editing video, I don't know. My favorite part of post-production really is storytelling. Same along the lines of what Ryan said, because um, you can cut something and make it look cool. You can cut something and make people cry or make people laugh or surprise them. I mean, one of my favorite things also about Incognita is that when there's this sort of spoiler towards the end of the film, the evil villain is revealed, and it's someone who's been in the film earlier that people did not think would be like returning. And every time we screen it, the audience goes, they like audibly gasp and they go, oh my gosh. Or there's like a joke that we've planted with this guy called the word count. And then we reveal at the end, like he's the count. Anyways, people laugh. So these are things that you plant in people's minds that then pay off later. And like, we can do that in novels. We could do it in oral storytelling, but it's really fun to put it in film and then see it play the same way with different audiences. And you're like, oh my gosh, I put meaning into this. And just, even shot lengths, timing, pacing, it all affects how people respond to the visual image. And so, yeah, to me, editing, storytelling, and yeah, yeah, it's invisible art, isn't it? It's a craft, something I could do forever. Except that the software, the software, y'all, we could talk later.
Well, we can go straight into the next question. What is your least favorite part of post-production? It's a good segue to like.
Ryan, you go.
I it's not the software for me. But I would say, like, I think it's the inverse of the storytelling piece of it. When technical stuff comes in, and it's like a where you're trying to, I actually really do still enjoy like cleanups and things like that. I think that's really a part of that same piece of storytelling. But when post-production becomes about something that doesn't really serve the story, when it's about, uh one of my pet peeves is, I'm sometimes asked to do like cosmetic enhancements, like for people, like, just because, like, it's like when you're catering to vanity as opposed to the story, and it's just like, this is not going to look as good because it's going to look filtered in a way that doesn't make the rest of the project look good. So some of the requests that don't really serve the story but are for other more mundane reasons, I think that probably is my least favorite aspect of post-production. Anytime I'm doing like cosmetic treatments, like holistically to footage, it just, like, I hate the way it looks. And like, even, I can dial it in and try to make it look as realistic as possible and as invisible as possible, which I do for everything, but it's still just, it's like, I'm like, this is doing nothing for the artwork. It's not about that. So that's probably my least favorite piece.
That makes sense. Oh my Lord. Allie, do you least favorite the software?
Well, only I'm just bitter. I'm bitter because I mean, in audio, I was a sound editor, right? And Pro Tools has pretty much been consistently used in the industry. So, you learn it, you spend time, it becomes a tool that you like to use. And, I also work with wood. Like, I like, specific tools I get comfortable with. So I'm not afraid of the technological changes. When Apple dumped Final Cut Pro in lieu of like a more consumer friendly version, which has since evolved, um, I was mad. And then I had to learn Premiere and Avid, we had to hire, this is going to go in a book. We had to hire people to make our Avid systems run. And like, I can't even get Avid to run on my MacBook Pro. So, and the licensing thing, I just feel like, let's all just start teaching DaVinci Resolve. So that's exciting to me. But also, more learning curve, and my time to spend learning, especially, I'll just say it, as a single mom, like I just don't.
In the end, but they're also not too. I'm a DaVinci Resolve person. I switched to
Okay, good.
DaVinci. I teach all three.
Yeah.
Avid is crashing on us constantly.
Right.
They're
My
like, but I tell them every major, network uses this, and they're like, how can they even use this? It crashes all the time. I'm like, I think they have the paid version and it probably works better.
Well, they have technicians that come in and make everything work, like that are paid. They rent the systems. I don't know. That's my experience on larger shows. Like we're not
Yeah.
maintaining it as editors.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I will second that,
Yeah.
Allie, in terms of that complaint, especially with, I think that it's so silly for the industry to be so specific to software in terms of their requirements. It's just like who out there is looking for cinematographers with like specific camera experience? I'm an editor first, and I will know what to do, and I can figure out which buttons to push. And
Yeah.
usually just like like a quick reset of the shortcuts to something I'm more familiar with is all that I need in order to switch back and forth.
Yeah, they really are. Once you get both, all the basics, you just kind of have to figure out this exporting system is different than this one and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Anyway, let's move on. I was going to say something about cables. My least favorite part are all those cables, but I was not going to let that. I'm going to put that box back on that Pandora's box and shut it.
Cables. I hate cable. Down with cables.
All of them.
Everything should be wireless except headphones.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. How did you get your start in filmmaking or storytelling in general if you did something before film? As we learned, you both did musical theater. So you got the storytelling bug early. But how did you get your start in film and media? And then just to kind of lead up, the next question is, what was your first paid or serious job? So if you want to do those together, you can, or you can do them separately too.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'll go. Let's see. Yeah, musical theater as a kid as a result of a horrible bicycle accident where I got this scar at age 9, and my grandmother like banned me from all sports. She like said my dad would be in big trouble. So musical theater, I ended up you're including like stories of women and my experience as a young woman. In musical theater, I eventually only got cast in these stupid roles where I'd have to wear a dress and heels and put makeup on. I'm like, absolutely not. And so I started working backstage, building sets, like, at freshman year of high school, building staircases and using table saws and power tools. And so I ended up doing sound for theater, where I saw the power of what I was doing to contribute to the storytelling of what was happening on stage. And so I worked in theater for years. In my high school, it was like my first job ever. And then also I went to Disney, worked at Disney MGM Studios in the theater there. Um, at a certain point, I realized I still wanted to do film because I love film. So I went to San Francisco State, and my first job out of school was an internship at a place called Berkeley Sound Artists. And I love, do you know them?
They sound
Um,
familiar, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so the owner of the company was this guy, Jim Lebrecht, who is probably the best sound designer for documentary film in the country, I think, or in the industry. Honestly, he's a genius, and he's worked with so many amazing filmmakers like Bing Liu, Minding the Gap. He worked on Unrest, um, and he taught me the power of sound design in documentary film. So I worked with him initially as an assistant sound editor, editing dialogue on a student project that was very low budget, so he couldn't pay his regular dialogue editor. And I just loved him and wanted to learn everything from him. So I stayed and made him coffee. I wouldn't go away. And so he decided to start paying me regular salary, but to just cut, dialogue, do some Foley. Um, and that's actually, I learned Pro Tools on the job with him because I had learned Sonic Solutions in school, which again is like you learn the software, you're gonna go learn something else in the industry. So just learn the technique behind it. But all that to say, Jim Lebrecht is amazing, and he ended up making his own film with Nicole Noonan called Crip Camp that got picked up by the Obamas and was nominated for an Oscar for Best Documentary, but lost to My Octopus Teacher. But Jim is a big disability rights activist now. He's directing his first narrative feature, I hear. I'm just thrilled. And he's since retired from sound editing, but
Super cool.
he got his start in theater too at Berkeley, the Berkeley Rep as the sound designer for theater. So there's something about us theater people. Like we know emotion because we could see it in the audience in real time. And maybe that's when we bring that to filmmaking, we're anticipating how the audience will react more because we're in tune with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe theater is so intense because you have to do the sound, the lights, if you do colored lights, everything is all at once. And if you miss your cue, you've blown it for everybody. So maybe there's some predisposition to that going into post because you're already into that. You understand how to bring all the pieces together. Could be. I didn't realize that was the guy who made Crip Camp. That's incredible. That's
Isn't
amazing.
that cool? It was the first film he ever made, and it's the story about how he went to this camp in the 70s and all the people he met who ended up going and rallying Congress to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act. That film is like the cornerstone of the disability rights movement.
Yeah.
And I'm just so proud that he decided to make his own work in addition to working for everyone else, right? It's really, I mean, it confirms for me, like, don't ever give up your own storytelling, especially when everything's so accessible. And if you have the time and the capacity and a story to tell, it's worth telling.
Yeah. And careers and roles and projects can evolve too. And you start at one, but you may be, you're going to be, ideally, you're expecting you're going to be somewhere else and making your own or, being a part of somebody else's film too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Ryan, where did you get your first start and then your first paid or serious job?
Yeah. So actually I do have the theater background, but it started after I was into video. And so I think I was like maybe 9, and it was just like a relative had brought a camera to a family gathering, and both my sister and I were obsessed with just like anything that was in front of people, like just any kind of performance type of thing. We were trying to like do that, like be that. So like like dance routines, and we had our own radio shows that we recorded on our boombox, and like we just did everything. And then when I was like, oh my gosh, like people can have cameras and they can do this themselves. Like I was just totally in love. And so just saved up for the cheapest camera out there, which was like a VHS-C kind of deals. So I didn't do the reel-to-reel editing, but I did do 2 VCRs, like one going into the other, in order to edit my first films that I was making when I was like 10 and 11. And so that's how I got started. I just never stopped making films from there. And I really just like kept doing it with a lot of other things. I was in a band in high school. I was homeschooled all through elementary school and high school, and I had some opportunities. Just really privileged to have a chance to like kind of I made the first part of like the feature film that I had written as like high school practicum, because we could do that. We could just say, okay, this is just going to be your class now. And so just kept doing that all the way through. And then my first paid or serious job in the industry, well, my first paid job was a gig making a music video for people that I had played with in a band, and they were now doing their own project. And I was in college, but I was not actually in a film program yet. I was doing something else, but I was working on my own web series, and at the same time I was doing I was creating a music video, and they hired me to make a music video, and it was actually 100% green screen. And I was learning how to do all of that on a like iMac in the library at MTSU. I was teaching myself how to do green screen, and I was using it was all in space, and so I was using like images from like from NASA, because they're in the public domain. NASA images are in the public domain. And so I was just like creating 3D layers out of them, and there's just kind of trying to make a project. It was called Galactic Seahorse, and that was my first paid gig.
Wow. And I missed, you said that who hired you to do that?
It was the band that was formed of members of the band that I had been in high school.
Okay, very cool. What an amazing first job. Wow. That's incredible. All right. I'm gonna look at these. I'm gonna keep us going. By the way, I just want to time check on you. It's 11:36 in New York anyway. What's your time like? Because I want to make sure we wrap up when you guys are, because I'm good till whenever.
I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to jump off at the hour.
Okay.
But okay with me. Is hopefully that works all right for you all.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay. So what helped you build from your early jobs to where you are now? We're always telling students, you got to network, you got to develop skills. Looking back, what do you think of all of those things was the most helpful? Building your own reel, having projects?
Wow. To be honest, wow. I have so many mixed emotions over this, because I worked really, really hard, and I freelanced for a long time, and I feel like I got so far, and then that was as far as I could get. And I got different excuses for it, like, oh, you have an MFA, you're too educated, you're too smart, like, or you wouldn't want this job, it's just pushing buttons or whatever, and like it but I'm grateful to the white men who gave me opportunities. And I really think specifically working with Michael Kirchberger in San Francisco, after I left working with Jim Lebrecht at Berkeley Sound Artists, there was an opportunity that came up that I heard about from a woman that I taught with at San Francisco State, who had to step back from editing because she had health issues. And she saw me and what I did in the grad program, and wanted to help, So she got me an interview with Michael and his team. And their offices were like right next to the Sentinel building, Francis Ford Coppola's studio. And Michael Kirchberger had established a working relationship with Francis and Sophia and everyone in the Coppola family. So it's a big deal. It's a big opportunity. And when I went to the interview, they asked, it was a table of guys, all white men, and they were, doing the work I would love to do. And so they asked me question after question of like like it was an exam. They were like, what is Ohm's law? What is the inverse square law? What is blah, blah, blah. Like, and I knew the answers, because I went to, I'm gonna brag on our alma mater, Ryan, but I went to Middle Tennessee State University, and their audio production program is one of the best in the country. And I picked that as an undergrad because I knew I would get a good education. And so that paid off. By the time I had that interview, I answered all of their questions without pausing. I knew, like, I just spent a lot of time learning what I needed to do. And that was just to, like, that door opened and I stuck my foot in it, and they couldn't close it because I knew what I was talking about. But then the last question that they asked me at this interview was, what book are you reading right now? And I had taken public transit to get there. And so I was reading a book on the way and I was like, let me show you. I pull it out of my bag and it was The History of Recording Industry. And it was something that my professors assigned me that like goes back to Edison and, the phonograph, wax cylinders and wire recorders. Like I'm fascinated with early recording. So that was enough to get my first job as an apprentice.
Hmm.
But from there, I was the only woman in the office, and the guys were kind, um, and I don't know, but I really, I didn't get much farther than that. And
Hmm.
eventually, I just wanted to buy a house and have a kid, and I saw a lot of the people I worked with doing like working on Oscar-winning sound crews, and they had to take a second job to get their kids through college. So, and these were white men also.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, if they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
But that was close to the writer's strike. I don't know if I answered your question at all, and I just went off on this whole thing about
No,
work.
but as an interview that's going to be in a book, I love that you talked about the learning you got from books and the skills, but also the knowledge too, that it's not just skills and I can do this in software, but just understanding all of it too. So
Yeah,
that,
the confidence, I think, to go into that room with when they're peppering me with questions, to know that I had studied and I had done the work I deserve to be in that room.
yeah,
Uh,
confidence. Love it.
yeah,
Preparation, learning. Yes.
yeah.
Fantastic. Ryan.
Um, I would say that with the exception of like time film competitions, I didn't really ever participate in festivals. So it may be an unusual thing about me as a filmmaker. I think that the thing that really propelled me from one opportunity to the next was working with people who were passionate about actually creating their art. And so it wasn't the people who were the big names or excited, like exciting opportunities in terms of like, oh, I'm working on this level now. It was just like people who were trying to do something kind of just really from the ground up, and really were pouring every part of themselves into it. And I think it was true for Incognita. I think it was true for the bands that I was doing music videos for. And I was, when I was kind of like a one-man band, kind of, doing everything from shooting to the visual effects. They were like doing hands-on, like Sarah and Christopher and both of their families, just like coming in and sewing costumes and building sets and things like that. Same thing with the artists that I was working with. The I could do visual effects and I could edit things, and to look, to add some production value. I could shoot things in a way that added production value. But ultimately, the fact that they were coming in and being passionate about it and pouring all of this effort and ingenuity into what they created elevated everything that I did so much more than I could have ever done it. And I think it's because our art form is necessarily collaborative all the time, that you can't be an editor just a solo editor that never works with anybody else. Like, you have to get the footage from somewhere, and somebody has to be responsible for what goes in front of the camera. And sometimes I like to be involved in that process. I definitely produce my own work, but it's ultimately the other artists that pour their passion into it that I think elevate the work beyond what I could do on my own, and beyond what some like big name like studio or something does. I think that genuine passion comes across in the work.
Wow, such a great answer. Because we all know if you're doing this by your own, you're going to head for burnout. But when you're working with a group, maybe that's where you both coming out of theater, you're all together. It feels like you're this like fire, like this orchestra, like everything contributes to everyone else's energy. And we also know the opposite, that burnout room and by yourself and isolation, and it's not the greatest feeling. So I guess if we're gonna, would it be appropriate to call it like peer relationships or developing like working relationships with peers as something
Yes,
like
for
that?
sure.
Yeah, collaboration is pretty fun. I mean, Ryan was on the set of Incognita not only as the visual effects supervisor, who, we would talk about how is this going to work all the way through the pipeline, because we're on a green screen set right now. Like, what's possible? What framing should we film this with to make sure he's got enough room in post to make it people look better? Like,
Wow.
um, I don't
Can I
know.
take a little blame for one part of that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Because it does relate to kind of how I ended up in visual effects. So like the green screen pickup plan, I early on, I think even in 2017, as Sarah was kind of looking at and very concerned about the shooting schedule, and like, I don't know how these things are going to come together, especially like, a couple shoots in, it was just like, how are we going to get all these people together? Like, we're missing XYZ shots from these shoots, and it's hard to make that all come together, and I'm not sure where our coverage is on XYZ scenes. I was like, okay, so here's a piece of experience that I don't know if I should be recommending, but when I was so when I started college, I was already working on this enormous project that I had set for myself, and I there were so many things that I had not learned about filmmaking, and I shot it all in one month. It was a basically a feature length project, much like Incognita, in that it was 4 episodes, but if you put the 4 episodes together, that it would made a feature length film, and it made more sense that way because the first episode was way longer than the other episodes. And I had shot that all in one month, and then shortly thereafter started taking my first film class and found out all the things that I had done wrong. and um and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And I was also like exploring After Effects for the first time. And I had taught myself Premiere and Final Cut, like leading up to that, but I had never done After Effects before until I was sitting on, once again, the iMacs that were in the MTSU library that had editing software. They had the Adobe Creative Suite on there, and I was teaching myself After Effects, and I was just like, oh, maybe there's some things that I could do in here to kind of fix this in post. But then I started realizing how daunting that was, and so I couldn't get everyone back together for an entire additional month of shooting. I was like, I'll just have one day, and I'll bring all these people in, and I'll shoot on a green screen. And I just figured out how to key in backgrounds and stuff like that. And so I'll just grab frames from other things and use those as backgrounds. So that was something that I had done in order to fix my my early student film. And I was just like, hey, well, if you want to just set up pickups, and we didn't have a particular studio, we were thinking maybe we'd shoot some stuff at MTSU, but if you want to just plan to do that, then you can cover a lot of things, and we just need to be grabbing plates and things like that. I had several years to kind of learn and be more sophisticated in how I approached visual effects, but I did kind of dig that hole for us of saying there might be a way to fix all of this logistical stuff with visual effects. And that was really why I started learning and teaching myself visual effects, is because I never took a visual effects class. But I just really wanted to make the stuff that I was making, and I wanted to make it the best it could be, even though I didn't have a lot of resources. And so I started doing that. And then when I was working any budget, and you don't have these things, but we do have a way to make some of these things possible that might not be easy to shoot or reshoot. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's incredible. Like, you just taught yourself from like the internet and videos and trial and error.
Yeah.
I went to school a while ago.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, there wasn't like any kind of it was very different at that time, just what was offered in terms of the post-production stuff. And then I also, so there was the animation track, which I wasn't on. But so I was just in the, single cam production track of things. But I already had projects that I wanted to make, and I needed to figure it out. So I just did what I had to do.
Yeah, and that's so cool. I mean, that's shows your passion and like how motivated you are. And I'm not afraid of green screen either because my first film I shot on 16 millimeter rear projection. I brought a car
Yes.
onto a sound stage, and I since I was shooting on 16, I'm like I'm not doing green screen. I mean, the technology was there, but I'm
Mm.
like I can't afford the digital intermediate. And my DP was like, just green screen it. Like Ryan's like, we'll green screen it, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, listen, DP, no, it's all in camera on this film. So, and I had always loved the old rear projection
Yes.
techniques, like some like it hot. It's just, especially when it's done really poor,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh, I would say also that the green screen shots of those 500, the green screen shots were not the most challenging. It was the full rotoscoping shots for the black background.
Oh my gosh, the television. Oh,
The
that was,
television? Oh, the television wasn't too bad. It
oh,
was
the
it was
black
worth dying
background
for.
in
Rotoscoping for worth dying for.
dying for. We could have just recut it. You should have told me. I would just use other footage, Ryan.
Wow.
This is where collaboration breaks down, right?
He loved the green screening so much and the rotoscoping. Let's just do it.
He's like, we can do it. I'm like, well, tell me you can't, or it's too hard, and then we'll fix it.
So Ryan, I know you need to leave, so I want to jump to the software question because I have a feeling if I ask you what's your software of choice, you're not going to say one, you're going to have like a list. So what is your software of choice and what do you recommend students knowing? Maybe they can't, maybe it's not realistic to say learn all 5 of them and After Effects and Blender and da, da, da. What do
Mhm.
you feel like they should be coming out of school knowing?
Wow. That kind of depends on the student, of course. Where if you're what you're going into is editing, I think there's still if you're primarily focused on editing and not trying to focus on visual effects, I still feel like is a certain amount of visual effects software that is always kind of necessary. For me, that is After Effects, and then kind of just supplementing with like I'd say After Effects and Blender are still necessities for editors, especially now. More and more, editors are being asked to be the primary motion graphics. If there's visual effects, people kind of group that together with editing. I think it's all kind of connected in there. So I would say that is a great way to go. I have never gone in for the to really invested time in learning paid 3D modeling things when we've had Blender. I've had Blender since as available since I was in college, and I think it's a wonderful resource. That the fact that it's out there and available to anybody for free is magnificent. On the other hand, if I was to go back and relearn and just kind of start my education over from the beginning, I would definitely include Fusion in that. So learning Resolve and Fusion once again, because the fact that Blender was out there and available to me to make things possible without the investment of resources of myself as an individual, like paying for a subscription or something like that. The fact that Resolve and Fusion are there and can do professional grade work on those free versions of those software platforms is wonderful. So I would definitely suggest learning Resolve and Fusion to anybody out there, whether you're being learning as an editor or as a visual effects person. I don't really get outside of those very much in terms of, but there is one thing that I have been working hard to add to my arsenal, and that is Unreal Engine. So and that, you know, it's everywhere right now, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think it's just a fad. I think it's definitely hugely popular over the last few years, you know, kind of starting from its use in The Mandalorian, but expanding to everywhere. And it really does make those it changes the ball game for what kind of vision you can realize, be it through in-camera visual effects. Um, and Allie, I loved hearing you mention rear projection, because I've got I've got Unreal Engine set up with a front projector in my own studio to do some, you know, kind of like poor man's virtual production in camera visual effects and stuff like that, because it is super valuable. And I really love that it did kind of combining that classic tradition of practical effects with kind of the new technology for in-camera visual effects and things like that. So I really love that, and as an approach. And so I think that it's not going anywhere. And once again, a resource that is freely available for students, film and filmmakers to learn and use. I think that all of those things are super valuable and can really give you a robust set of tools.
Wow, I knew you'd have a detailed answer. Do you have a favorite? Like, if you were just gonna open your computer and be in one software all day, and like, what would that be?
Gosh, I guess I'd be in After Effects all day. Um, and in After Effects, for Incognito, for almost anything else I do, I am using a plugin in order to do 3D more expansively inside of After Effects. So Element 3D is what I'm using in there. So it's kind of its own little software inside of After Effects. But so yeah, probably that. But it would be painful not to be able to like round trip to Premiere if I was just stuck in the one platform, because I definitely, there are lots of things that I do much faster on Premiere in terms of when we're talking about timelines versus, you know, the intense, densely populated compositions that I would create in After Effects.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, cool. Love After Effects also. All right. Ryan is 12, so if you need to hop off, I mean, feel free to stay as long as you can and want to, but if you need to hop off, that's good too. Oh, you're muted.
I probably do. But thank you so much for including me in this, Ali. Thank you for inviting me and thinking of me with all of this. And this was a wonderful conversation. I rarely get the chance to talk about all this, but I really love to. So thank you so much. And
I
it was
know, the
wonderful.
silent geniuses, right? I mean, we never would have been able to do Incognito without you, Ryan, and all the
Mm.
and Grace Kwok, who was like your assistant
Yes,
through Incognito. We haven't talked about her, but she did so much,
she
and
did.
yeah. I
Incredible.
mean,
Like a student coming in and just doing an incredible amount of visual effects. Uh,
Um, it's something I think in a classroom we have to start talking about it too, gently and carefully, and not in a destructive way, but like, things
mhm.
are global now. It's the reality. You're never gonna unglobal the globaling. It just
Yeah.
doesn't. So how do we compete? Or how do we not compete? Maybe even just stay a part of it, right? And do things like what you were doing, where like, you know, it really was necessary for everybody to be in Nashville at the same time and working together. There's that synergy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh,
okay. Let me go back to the last two that I skipped. The one was about hiring processes. So it sounds like you might sit on a couple of sides of that, because you talked about being hired, and I love the job interview story.
oh
And
man. Yeah.
this could even be academic, because people may want to, you know, learn about being in, you know, hiring professors and how you get started there too. But from your side, do you do hiring, and what does it look like, and what sort of things, you know, are you looking for in a resume or a reel, and you know, how does that work for you?
I guess it is interesting because now I'm on hiring committees for faculty. So I'm responsible for, helping field candidates and choose the best people to put in front of this next generation to inspire them in ways that are not just looking backwards at what, the canon, right? I hear so much the canon. We have to teach all of these specific films, which all turn out to be by white men. And our students are not solely white men. Even in Middle Tennessee, we defy. We have a huge population of students of color, students who are neurodiverse, students who are queer, come from rural areas, lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and we're a public university. So I really want to see all of my students succeed in their goals. And a lot of the times they don't know what those are when they're 18. They come in, they're like, oh, I love YouTube. So I don't know. I really take that responsibility of hiring faculty seriously. We are working in the state of Tennessee, and we can't do certain things that used to be standard practice, like asking candidates about their ideas on how to reach students of diverse backgrounds. We can't really talk about these things because it's now against the law. And it is in many states in the country. I think there's like 11 states with these divisive concepts laws that prevent us from considering things and hiring outside of federal labor laws. And anyways, all that to say, but what I do care also about the hireability, the employability of my students. And what I hear, I do a lot of sending students onto sets in the industry, knowing my colleagues who are actually still working on set in Nashville, always asking for student help. And I hear back from them about how well prepared our students are compared to, maybe private schools where the tuition's 3 times the amount. So I'm really proud that, we create a student body that's, they're enterprising. We teach them about freelancing and promoting themselves first and foremost within the industry. And they're so far so good. They're doing great. And I hear a lot of positive feedback about our students on set, not being on their cell phones, looking at what's happening, trying to think ahead and how can they be helpful in this moment. So I'm really glad for that.
Okay. Okay. I love this. I love this. Let's see. Yeah, it's hard hiring. It's
Yeah, I don't know. Like if I had money, if I had a lot of money.
personal connections. It comes back to that so often. And so I think like when I was getting started, when I made my first films, it was if your family knew somebody who knew somebody in the industry. My parents are social workers. Like I'm like, how am I ever gonna get started? But everyone said, forget, there's no way you apply for this job. And I knew a couple of people in my college who went on to film, and they all had a family member who knew somebody who knew somebody. It was, to say discouraging is like an understatement. It was like,
Oh, for
that
real.
road does not exist for me. Gotta find another way.
Insane too, because like even talking about my career, like I'm like, are these words coming out of my mouth? I worked for the Coppolas and I worked on all these films and visual effects editor. And even then, even with all of these opportunities and privileges I had to get my foot in the door, and I felt so confident and competent. I still can only get so far. And that's why I think I turned to making my own work, which I think, a lot of you're seeing like some actresses who are like, I wish that I could act in films that are challenging to the female characters, like with real characters whose sole purpose is not to like entertain the men watching the film. So I don't know. I almost feel like, well, if I can't get hired on a film, then I'm gonna make my own films. And and I've had to work a job to be able to do my own creative work. And I chose not to stay in the industry. And even though it was a pay cut to go into academia.
It and like do the titling, but I teach it, and the students, I started doing it because they would ask, and they're like, can we have an After Effects class? I'm like, we could do a 1 month After Effects session where you get introduced, because they all love Premiere and they're like, this is going to be easy. And they get into it and they're like, oh my God, there's This is the opposite of premiere's easiness. This is like you have every choice everywhere and you can't make any choices because there's too many choices.
Right. And
Yeah.
then you get carpal tunnel. And then your career is over.
And you've spent a month working on something and it's 1 second long.
Yeah, right.
You play it for your friends and they're like, you spent a month and it goes boop.
Yeah, yeah, isn't it great? Like, oh wow, really need to go outside, don't I?
They need some sunlight now. Exactly. Oh my gosh. All right. Last question in this section. How is your perspective as an editor unique in the industry? And you've definitely shared quite a few things, on this too, but please.
Gosh, I don't know. How is it unique in the industry? I think maybe I'm like this Gen Xer who grew up, like I learned by watching films on 35 and then cutting films on 16, and my childhood movies are Super 8. Like I just I love the organic quality of making films on film. Like to me, my first film process, which took a year to make a 12-minute film, and it cost me $15,000. And much of that was, I mean, the film stock was just one part of it, but the post production in finishing on film and that film print, every time I would get into a festival, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't afford this, because I would have to strike a print and get it sent off, especially if two festivals were playing at the same time. So like, and negative cutting, you paid $4.50 for every edit, right? So my film school peers and I would like, my unique perspective is coming from that era, but also like VHS, and my film school application was two VCRs, linked together as a play, pause, same thing that Ryan was talking about. Like you just build the story with whatever technology you have at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I wonder like how much AI is going to change some stuff with visual effects, and yeah, we didn't hear Ryan's perspective on it, but I wonder if we're just going to be like boop, all that work.
I don't know. We're
Mm,
not boop
we're not there
about
yet.
a lot of things yet, that AI or whatever, self-driving cars, all these things, they all have their big limits that they hit pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's true. I tried to make a film in AI last summer. It was a disaster. It's so bad, but I laughed so hard because I was trying to
Good.
use it as like footage generative AI to tell part of this music video story I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Missing fingers and heads all melted. It was hilarious.
VR, it's like VR. They had such expectations. I
Right.
went to one of those VR like places where you go and you walk through, and yeah, like the people that were confronting you, their arms were kind of missing parts or they couldn't move fast.
Yeah.
And you're
Like,
like, yeah,
like
you're like, hey, this is okay. I'm like, how much money did you spend on this?
totally. We actually in COVID we got we got some federal COVID funds at our university, and our previous department chair used $1 million of it to buy a virtual production stage. So we're like, oh, the first in the state of Tennessee to have this virtual production stage. And many of the faculty members were terrified of teaching this because no one knows how this works. And it's like software like disguise and server based like mapping to the wall, but there's also motion tracking, and then Unreal, which we've been offering a class in Unreal Engine for filmmakers, which is really great. And I created a class called Virtual Filmmaking and Production Design. So we've been collaborating with this Unreal Engine class to make films on this $1 million wall.
Wow.
Second semester, like there was something happened, the camera tracking wasn't working, the wall's not functional, everything grinds to a halt. And we're a public university with no tech support really, other than a senior staff engineer and the assistant engineer who are running around putting out fires everywhere. So in many cases I've been like, just get me a green screen. What is this virtual production stuff? Like I could do the same thing on a green screen and we'd be done. But there's so much post that comes now into pre-production with virtual production. I don't know if it's a time saver, In Nashville, those stages are 50 grand a day. So
Ah,
they're not for independent filmmakers. They're
yeah,
for the record labels, and but our students are going to get jobs in it because it's new, and the older folks like me are not going to want to learn disguise
yeah,
for running
yeah,
LED systems, but our students are younger and more interested in that technology. But then again, I'm different. I'm old, and I love I love hands-on stuff.
yeah, yeah, hands on, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could talk about VR and technology all day, but okay. Favorite films. What are some of your favorite films or films that you love the editing in? Just anyone's film.
Oh wow, favorite films editing. God, I haven't even been watching films. Isn't that horrible? I'm gonna have to think on this. I mean,
When
I saw Requiem for a Dream and I'll never watch it again, but I show clips from it and I really love the editing in there. I love Man with the Movie Camera. um, I love experimentation with editing, montage theory. I think anything that experiments with, you know, manipulating the mind of the viewer. I have a colleague, Jennifer Proctor, who works out of University of Michigan,
oh,
Dearborn, and she
okay.
does, Jennifer. All right, Jen. Anyways, so she makes these found footage films, and they're all, really complex ideas told through just repetition, and like she's making these observations about tropes in cinema through like cutting women and scenes of women in bathtubs, and I just think her editing's brilliant, because it's making those associations and it's doing it in a way that's political. And so for me as a queer person growing up not seeing representations of myself, like that sort of unapologetic, just gutsy editing style is really see, like, are there gender differences? But then again, you got people like Thelma Schoonmaker, Sally Menke, who are cutting, who have, and rest in peace, Sally, but like, cut some really brutal stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think women can be brutal too. Maybe there's some differences.
Yeah, I mean, look at Catherine Bigelow. She makes action films.
Right. Yeah.
She's not
Yeah.
making like let's all share our feelings films. They're like
Yeah.
it's always done.
Like,
So
is there a sensibility maybe like in the editing style between,
yeah.
I don't know, even in the cutting of horror or whatever, you
Uh,
know?
yeah. It's a good question. I don't
Hmm.
know if it's an answerable question because
I
we
know,
talk to
right?
women in film class and we talk about that a little bit and we never really come to a conclusion. It's just a lot of reflections on
Fun to explore though, and how editing is constructed some like women, like classic strong women characters like Ripley and Aliens, but then she's in her underwear. Or
yeah,
was it in the first film she was in her underwear?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh. Um, I don't know.
Oh my Lord. So in your own work, maybe the documentary or maybe it was
Yeah.
incognita, do you have like go-to techniques? Like you were talking about the
Oh,
rear projection, that was like a favorite,
I
but
love that. Yeah, split screen. Since I was able to work digitally, I love split screen. I don't know. I think as I've become more academic, I see it as like maybe it's a form of cubism that I'm reclaiming, of like just being able to really take an event and look at it from all these different perspectives, which sounds more academic than what it actually looks like on screen. It just looks fun and energetic. Um, but really, like, now at this point, my favorite technique is shooting on film and hand processing. My latest film is playing next month in the Nashville Film Festival. It's called Pearl Diver, and it's a film noir about a woman who's trying to dump her abusive boyfriend with the help of her hot new lover, who's a woman. So that all three of these characters come together one night at a bar. And so we shot this on Super 8, black and white, hand processed it. It's playing at a festival. It's going to be shown in DCP format. I'm like, How wild. I mean, we processed it, pulled it out, and I think I filmed it. I'm this how poor I am as a filmmaker. I projected it onto a wall as a negative, and then I shot it off the wall with a 4K camera, inverted it in Premiere, so white is now black and black is now white. Did some like contrast work and like cropped it so that you didn't see all the frame edges. Um, and that's it. Like, wow,
To me, that's not poor, that's creative. And that's just knowing the
limited.
technology and the steps and what you need to do. And like, why
Yeah.
spend more money than we need to, right?
My
Why?
gosh, now I got a Super 8 film. It's 3 minutes. I think we shot 2 rolls to make that work. And what was it cost? Like $100.
Wow.
In fact, they're like one of the coolest things I saw in Nashville. John Cameron Mitchell came to town and did a live performance at Oz Arts. It's like an art center. And they had live projections playing behind the band with an overhead projector and like, a tub of olive oil and putting shapes in. And it was the coolest thing ever. Like, going back to these old techniques like in the 60s with Jefferson Airplane. Like and it's affordable and I don't know, but maybe that takes jobs away in post when you start getting creative like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Wow, I'm not helping your book.
No, you are. This is super cool. It gives
Technology.
everyone like some like things to think about that are not, especially because film industry in New York, LA, we don't
Mhm.
always put Nashville in there. Nashville has a massive industry. We also don't put in, someplace like Las Vegas, right? Which has a huge amount of media production, but it's not fiction film, and we're not all Hollywood and television.
Uh,
And the music industry is enormous too. And so,
Huge.
you know,
And all the artists need to promote themselves on social media and
yeah.
they're in fact, I started teaching in the recording industry MFA program because they wanted at MTSU, they wanted all of their audio engineers to know video.
Oh,
Like
wow.
how to promote themselves, what to do with their artists, like if they ended up producing, how do we use video to promote them? Yeah, and I know people in town who they work, they have relationships with record labels and they will work for one day with an artist. They'll shoot a ton of footage and they'll edit it like the second half of the day. So in one day they put together like a 3 to 5 minute promo video and they charge $1,000, which is a deal for the record labels and it's a deal for the guy because he can do it really quickly. And then
Yeah.
he's the next thing. And so he does like 5 or 6 a month and he's got everything paid. I don't know. Like
When I
they're
first moved to New York, I was doing promo videos for a place, doing kind of that for actors who needed reels. So
oh, that's great.
it's a job.
Yeah.
It's a job.
Then labels used to pay 100 grand for a video. They're not gonna do that now. Even with the 50 grand a day studios. There's no way. It'll be interesting to see how virtual production exists outside of Hollywood.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm.
But this is a really good segue to the next question about music and how you work with composers. Like this film Pearl Diver, did you have a composer or score?
Oh, Rigoletto, Verdi, Giuseppe Verdi. Yeah, that was part of the Nashville Opera Film Noir competition, and the whole purpose of that was to do a film for the overture of Rigoletto. So we were like two women filmmakers in a room full of all men competing for this winning slot to play in front of the opera Rigoletto that was being done in a film noir version. But the director, who's a guy, got up and told us this horribly misogynistic plot line of Rigoletto. And my colleague Missy and I looked at each other like, "Oh hell no, we're gonna make a feminist response." So, anyways, we had to use the actual opera music, but it turned out great. But for I'm lucky in that I guess I'll back up and say music's so hard to get licensed, especially when you're an independent person. Sometimes, like we've lost jobs, and with Michael Kirchberger, we lost a job because, oh God, what was it? Darjeeling Limited. They had only so much money for the sound post budget, and someone underbid us. And still, like our bid was 250 grand for audio post, and we got underbid by another person, but they had to license music, and so a huge amount of the budget for audio went to music licensing for that film, and lost the job.
Um,
Um, Anyways, so but now I'm really lucky to work with students at MTSU because we have the commercial songwriting program. We have an audio production program. We've got like music scoring classes. And in Nashville, there's a ton of music supervisors whose job is to get music placed in film and television, mostly for the country music industry. But these are folks who are skilled and, who are friends, you can look towards to get advice. But almost every film I've made, I've initially used unlicensed music and it's hurt me.
yeah.
My most recent film, I'm collaborating with a student who's writing stuff for it. But yeah, music's so hard. I think
Incog-
collaborating with a composer is so critical.
yeah. But Incognita is a musical,
Oh
right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was thinking more about
Well,
Prodigal
yeah.
Son
But this
documentary.
is, yeah, this is because documentary and you're licensing and getting soundtracks and scores, and it's doing film music. There's all these little categories.
Oh my
So
gosh, there's people going around Nashville. There's music in every clip. I'm like, how can I use this? Like, really looking at fair use. Now I'm gonna have to run everything through a lawyer to make sure like I'm not violating copyright or even privacy laws with the people in the footage. Ugh.
mm,
But Incognita, yes, luckily original music because Sarah, who made the costumes, also wrote all the music and stars in this film. So yeah, and then we worked with a um, David Weinstein, who's a composer who had done a lot of work with Nashville Children's Theater, um, and he also teaches at Belmont University, or did teach, and I think has since left to start a theater camp in Maine. Like tough life there. Sounds fun. But anyways, he did some orchestrations with strings, and because we're in Nashville, Sarah's got a music studio in her backyard. We all have these like sheds in our backyard where we record really amazing music here in Nashville. So I will say Tennessee has passed an incentive for scoring. If you use musicians here in Tennessee, you can get a tax rebate.
that's
Anyways,
that's good to know.
yeah, composing for film, TV, and games because we're so
Wow.
many composers in Middle
So
Tennessee.
cool. I had a composer on my documentary that I'm releasing now, and
Game
you know,
changer.
you pay someone, but then you don't deal with all of the licensing and the headaches of that. You pay someone and you send it over to BMI and you're like, okay, here we go. And then you get what you want.
Yeah, I know. Just yeah, I think that's a good place to put your money in a budget.
It is.
Mhm.
Okay. Film industry, recent developments in post-production. What are you
Mhm.
excited about, and specific tools that you love or initiatives that you're excited about?
Mm. Two different worlds, I guess. The most excited, me personally, editing on an iPad. I'm kind of really excited about it. I cut a little film on my iPhone as a joke for a friend, and it took me about an hour, and I'm like, this is so easy and fun. Even though it's way limited to what you could do on an actual workstation, but thinking about how to teach this to my kiddo, you know, and also realizing like I think I'm neurodivergent now, like my kid is, I think I have ADHD. And so there's something satisfying about going back to that tactile thing.
Ah,
Maybe I started with in celluloid film editing, but now I don't get blood from razor blades anymore. Like I literally first film, I have a huge scar back from when I reached on top of the moviola and caught the guillotine
my
splicer.
God.
It was a Revis splicer, so the blade was up and I went
Oh,
on the
wow.
moviola. So I won't miss that.
Yeah, that it's a work related, like, okay, I just cut my arm off on my
Hey,
editing.
you're talking about workplace safety. Yeah, definitely like the old splicers were dangerous. But I'm also teaching virtual production now. So simultaneously, like from this really simple technology to really complex technology that requires all these different engineers and people to come together.
Yeah.
Um, that's exciting, but also like it's exhausting. And but I think great opportunities for students to get their foot in the door also because it's new, and the young people are just, it's like easier for them to learn a new language, you know?
And normal for them to think about virtual and remote production. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. The trick with virtual production for me is like, it's kind of interesting because you create a background first, and then you've got a production design to that background to make it match. And so, you know, the lighting, who's that walking across my front yard? Tennessee, get my gun. No, just kidding. I don't have a gun. Yeah, so, you know, if you have a background and it's like, we redid a Star Wars scene, or they created their own Star Wars world. So it's like this icy planet with a lava lake and red aurora borealis. So we got to make sure the lighting matches, even though some light comes from the screen, not all of the light comes in. And then, you know, when you shoot it, you're thinking about the edit because you're not green screening and coming up with like, I don't know. It's exciting, but it takes a lot of planning. And
Oh,
it's probably good training for production management too, because you're just like, everything's got to come together in this one day. And then
no.
it's easy in the edit. You're like, oh, great, it's there.
Yeah.
It's
Whew.
wild.
That's, yeah, that to me is like musical theater, like all that kind of planning, like where it comes in and you're just doing it
Mhm.
all almost live. And
Oh yeah, totally, totally. And it's why? Like why? The reason would be like, well, you could film on Mars. Like, okay. But still, it's a lot of work in front of the screen to make that believable, too. Just like rear screen projection, you know, they had to hold on to a steering wheel like they're actually in a car.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Wow.
we also can put in foreground plates on this because we have a multi-server disguise system, and each render server was like another 50 grand or something to add. So now that we have two of those servers, we could do a back plate and a foreground plate, background and foreground. So you could put like, you know, objects in the foreground digitally
Oh,
and render it, and then it has to be rendered out of the computer as a shot.
okay.
But it's just like, oh my God. And then they're all camera tracked also
I
with
thought you were meaning remote production, but you're talking about virtual production where the
on set.
actor and the recording and everybody is in a different physical location, but there's somebody on a set somewhere.
No, this is all on set. Like if I were to film Incognita season 2, I
Uh-huh.
could create the whole world on the LEDs on the volume. And
Uh-huh.
as long as, and if I wanted to put foreground elements that would match the background, you could composite them in real time
Wow.
with the actors on stage performing the scene. But the camera, like if we've got an Alexa filming, you know, the camera's being tracked in 3D space, and then all of this goes into Unreal and then gets rendered out as a
I
new
see.
shot
I see.
for every take, right? But everything's being processed as it's being recorded in Unreal.
Oh my
So
Lord.
the camera is just a tool that's feeding video into Unreal now, and then Unreal
Oh,
is compositing everything live. And so, in order to make that happen, there's so like you have to know what the backgrounds are going to look like. You have to call it like an LED cube that they were
yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Never have filmed that on a green screen, really. I mean, I guess they could, but the lighting was incredible.
It
I
maybe
don't know.
is it like you know, with Avatar when James Cameron was like pioneering this like software, you know, and he kind of said, okay, if you invent it, then I'll use it. But you know, it wasn't maybe it was like that where he, you know,
Yeah.
I've read a little bit about the background of gravity, but I didn't know that. So
Oh
maybe
my gosh.
he
Go
said, oh my
look
gosh,
at
if you invent it,
Gravity.
I'll use it.
Yeah, and I think they mainly did that for lighting. Um, and so then how did they do that? How did they composite everyone if they're inside an LED cage? Like it's, I don't know, but it's really impressive. And
What
that,
scares me about these is you're locked in. That's it. And
yes,
if you're
exactly.
old school VFX, it's not even old school. If you just you can change. But
Yeah, maybe
you're
you
locked in
just
with it.
think you could, yeah, recompose and stuff. Like yeah. Yeah, you've got all the separate elements. It's like when we're recording sound and we're like, okay, just get the cleanest recording because we can enhance it later. But if it's trash when you're recording, you're locked in with that, you know, all that noise. Now you're just trying to fix what you've seen. or
Yeah.
what you got in the soundtrack, which is not, that's not a good creative start.
Wait, I'm laughing because that was a question about what developments are you excited about? And the next one is what is the biggest challenge? So is this an answer to both questions?
Yeah, I mean, here's a great challenge for students reading this book. And we just started first day of class. Um, I walked into class, the room's locked, and as I walk up, I have 20 students in my class. Every single one of those 20 students is up against the wall in the hallway on their phones, not talking to each other. And they also told me first day, like, we talked about mental health. I have a section in my syllabus. I said, a lot of us now are suffering with depression, anxiety, mental health struggles. If you're on medication, there's no shame. But I'm seeing that students, and they laughed about it because I mentioned, like, I met my spouse in a classroom here, and I never would have met that person if I was on the phone. You might be standing next to someone really special. You never know it. But the implications for collaboration are huge, right? I mean, students are collaborating through Discord, they're talking all the time, but they're not talking face to face. And I think that they're like the fear of even, I see it in my kid, even going outside is uncomfortable, because she wants to be on YouTube all day. And I'm like, okay, well, now we're going to be creators and not just consumers. So it's hard to shift student mindset away from consuming. And I
Yeah.
think our whole culture is based on that. But it's like I don't really watch television because I'll make it and then I want to go home and garden, you know,
I
something
get it.
else. So I feel like I think our mental health challenges in this younger generation, like they're consuming so much content, but I want them to start making it.
Yeah. And I love that as a content creators and filmmakers, we make things for screens, but yet our challenge is screens.
Right.
And we kind of feel like we shouldn't be saying get off the screen, but like you have to get off the screen. You have to,
Mhm.
because at some point you make a film about real life. And how
Mhm.
does it resonate with an audience if their entire life is on screen and they haven't had those encounters face to face?
Yeah, or had conflict with people and learned how to resolve it. And like that's the stuff that stories are made of. If you're not living your life, then you'll just repeat whatever tropes you've I don't know. I don't know. I just, and also confidence in my young women students, AFAB students, just really at that age, 18 to 21. And I remember myself at that age, you just are like, make yourself as quiet as possible, as small as possible. Don't rock the boat. If the guy says he wants to direct, he probably knows what he's doing in your group, right? So I'll just, hold the boom, which is still an important position. But I really want to see, young students, all students, but a lot of students of color and AFAB students like try to take leadership roles by making stuff that you have to have a supportive faculty member to show it in class and like respectfully talk about issues that are important to these communities. But I don't know, I try to encourage my students to make things with their own voice while they've got access to all this great stuff.
Yeah.
Filmmaking equipment, but a confidence gap, really. And then mental health, poor kids. I just want to give them all hugs.
Yeah.
Of course, like, do you need a, I don't know.
Well, let's see. Next up, I mean, I feel what you're saying. And now
Hmm.
we're going into AI and
Yeah.
now they're chat GPTing their papers and blah, blah,
Oh,
blah.
yeah. Yeah.
But the
Um,
range for film, it's going to take all that. We kind of touched on this a little bit. Where do you at? Do you use it? It's going to take our jobs. We're all
mm,
going to be at work.
I don't think it's gonna, I mean, I know Tyler Perry was like, oh shit, like I'm gonna scale back on building sound stages in Atlanta because of this. And yeah, same with VR. Like I remember my colleagues were like, VR is gonna change everything. I'm like, well, okay. I made a film in VR and I was like, ooh, this is weird. And I don't like, who's gonna watch it? It's so hard to like get people to put the goggles on, or even Google Cardboard and YouTube. It wasn't easy for them to consume, I guess, or access on Steam or whatever. So VR for me, just kind of fun, experiment. It's like shooting on film. Try different medium and see how that changes storytelling. AI, I think, really, I mean, I made a film with it last semester, music video. I was like, what did I use? Runway Gen 3, Runway AI, for image and text to video. And it just like generative AI. First of all, I had to pay, fine, okay. And then everything that it shot out was just horrible, and you would have to try and craft the prompts. It takes the joy out of that. I would rather go film something than type in a bunch of words and not get exactly what you want. What I think AI is really cool for maybe is like creative visioning, like, if you're going to do something and you want maybe production design, get some interesting ideas. And I know for editors, like there are new things built into the software that, generative, I'm not going to use it. I don't know. Maybe I'll use them. Most importantly, transcriptions for me, like transcriptions, and now being able to copy paste in a timeline. That just seems like a huge leap forward for someone like me trying to cut this. Yeah.
Now they're pushing 85 to 90% correct. They're getting, I mean, it's just so much more improved in terms of
Fantastic.
accuracy.
Mhm.
So sure. And I just did it for, SRT files for all of your subtitles, translation. I have to translate my film into Spanish and French. You start
Awesome.
with AI, even a translator is going to start with an AI version and then fix it,
All of that is great. Great
Yeah.
uses for AI. Like, because
Uh,
I used to have to hand transcribe. I mean, I'm sure we all did. I mean, of our generation,
yeah.
right? Like, tedious
Hours
and
of
yeah, like, okay, this is a good section I can return to, but you
yeah.
can just look at the transcript. Now you can keyword search the transcripts. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, haven't gotten into too much of using it for timelines, other than there's a software called Descript that I use for audio editing. Take the transcript in and you can edit it like a Microsoft Word document, like anything, just
Yes.
cut and paste, but it
Mhm.
matches back to your audio. And I was able to export, and so you have a little timeline because this is for like podcasts.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
but it's really, really good about getting ums out, ums and uhs and likes. Like it is precise to the microsecond for that. It's way better than I could do in a Premiere timeline.
Isn't
And
that
just,
crazy? Yeah, and that's what I would spend hours doing in Pro Tools. And I was
yeah,
so proud of myself for being able to cut those out and have them be seamless. But now AI can do it, which is great because that lets me do other things. But for documentary, man, in Premiere, the new version, you can highlight, go transcript, copy, paste it in a timeline, and there's the video and sound. Like that's
yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah. I was taking a Descript export that was like an audio export, and then I would like bring it into my Premiere timeline, and then I could match the audio files back to the video and like relink them. And I kind of hacked that, a couple years ago, I started doing that, and now Premiere just does it. So you just like edit your word and boop, there's your selects reel.
There's your assembly. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is great.
Like, wow, okay. But it's not perfect. It's not like you just basically saved yourself some time. You made a 3-day job into a 3-hour job, but still, that's good. But it's not like you're done. I think podcasts, it's you can get to almost a very final product with this. I don't think it's so there with documentary yet.
Oh, wow. Well, what does that do to podcasts then when it becomes more automated?
Well, the weird thing is Descript also lets you say, you can type it in, then you can have an AI voice like say it. You can make the entire product without any human being involved other than the one person. So what does this do for misinformation? It doesn't scare me. It terrifies me for what it can do because those AI voices sound super real.
Right, you don't know what's real or not. There was a New York Times story like this week about two different short stories about the same topic. It was like the prompt was like summer beach read or something, and a real author wrote one, and then Chat GPT wrote one, And I thought ChatGPT had the more human element to it. I was feeling emotion from that story, and then the author wrote the other one. What that was totally like it didn't make sense. I was confused. So that human element, the it's not as perfect as like I think we're accustomed to see things as, you know, this
Oh,
is how it is perfect, but the human element is flawed, right?
I don't know.
I was just like I froze in fear, and so even though I've done some really cool stuff, like I wish that I had mentors who looked like me, right? Or like were queer or whatever, like that I could look towards and they could give me a little bit of career guidance because I was just with cis white guys in their 50s and 60s who've been doing this for years, and
Yeah.
I got a lot of coffee for people and that's okay. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I want better for my students.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that note, okay. What is, so we talked a little bit about this again too, one of the lots of progress in terms, I think, especially compared to those days, because that's how it was when I started.
Hmm.
Quite a bit more progress in terms of making filmmaking accessible and inclusive and safer too. No arms getting cut, but also that pressure and that fear of what are these, what is it like for me to be in this industry? Because there's no protections. It's freelance. There's no HR department anywhere. Still is
Right.
most of them, right? Unless you're going to broadcast TV and that's got a little bit of that, but um,
Mm-hmm.
so you shared a little bit on your perspective on some of these. What do you feel are some successes? Where might some of these initiatives go next?
Oh, like our like Me Too,
Yeah, me too.
diversifying the Oscar so white.
Intimacy coordinators, some of these things.
Intimacy coordination, yes, and your work in that is phenomenal, by the way. And I'm going to share that with the grad students, and maybe because we're developing an MFA um, in film and television here. What? Tell me this. Can you just quickly state that again? What?
Oh, what are some of the successes?
Mm,
Where do you feel some of these initiatives could go next?
mm.
Or also what kinds of support might be needed for these initiatives to be meaningful? So you're talking about your students getting,
God,
jobs that are
yeah, the
better.
diversity pipelines and programs. I've not seen some opportunities still require money, to like, great. So my student can get an internship on John Oliver, but they have to live in New York City. This is a kid from rural Tennessee, who's coming with no resources. It would be great to have like grant programs, and maybe there are, and I just don't know about them. In the South, I think we're kind of isolated in the industry. And I've worked in California, and I think that there's a lot of misconceptions that, we're not smart, we're not capable of post-production in the South, even though, Atlanta's right down the street. And a lot of people who live in Nashville and Atlanta came from New York and California because they got sick of that, like lack of work-life balance, and, cost of housing out there is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, like there are great opportunities for students now that there's an awareness that our storytelling has been dominated by cis white men for so long. And I think really the studies coming out of the USC Annenberg Foundation, or it was it a foundation? I don't know, or institute. Um, God, those have been really interesting just to look at the actual statistics of like composition of characters on and off screen, the crew behind the scenes, like what is that makeup in terms of gender, ethnicity. Um, what I opportunities, I still see so much of the industry run by cis white men, and I'm lucky to have been given opportunities. I'm not a person of color. They couldn't tell that I'm gay by looking at me. But once they did find out I was gay, like also there was there's weird stuff happening in the industry around that. Like I'm on an all male crew and they're like, what do you think about her? I'm like, oh, like it's not comfortable when you're the only one in a room that's not the same, you know, time after time after time. So I don't know. I think what I've done, and I encourage my students to do it, is just like make your work, make stories that you want to make. And even, if it's not good right now, if you have a great idea and you build an audience, you can get,
Actually the only one. You know,
right.
I teach
Yeah.
film class and I'll get a couple of guys in there every semester. And I'm always like, good for you. Like,
Yeah.
you look at it as a film history class that's about the women filmmakers, but you're still going to learn a lot of film history too. And you're not going to think about, like, I had this one guy, he just went off on love and basketball
Oh, cool.
because he loved it. And he's like, I never knew this about the film. And it was
Yeah.
great. He's a basketball player. And it's just, I don't
Hey.
know, it's just great, you know?
Oh, women directed that. Cool. Wrote it and directed it. That's amazing. Like, who
Um,
knew? I mean,
who
yeah.
knew? Who knew? But yeah. So next question, again, you just kind of touched on this in a little bit too, like safety on set was with the intimacy coordinator is kind of how we talked about it, but
Safety and
safety
post.
in editing, you
Oh
know?
God, I've got a great story for you because this is a career ender for me, this issue. My last professional job, was it one of the last? Okay. Last professional job in television was working on an ESPN series called Bonds on Bonds, and it was produced by Tolan Robbins Productions, who I guess one of the guys now is the head of Paramount. Anyways, but when they had made Smallville, and then they were doing this little show, and so there are all these like associate producers and stuff that flew in to tell us what their story was going to be so we could cut it, but the producers wouldn't figure this out until like, Tuesday. The show has to be uploaded like Saturday. So everyone's like filming Wednesday. The tapes come in Thursday. We got Thursday, Friday. Well, Thursday to edit an hour-long show, Friday to do color grading and sound, and then drive this to the satellite uplink facility right at this, because it's got to be there because there's only 1 hour of air uplink time because it's expensive. So it's satellite uplink to Connecticut. And my job was a lead assistant editor on this. So there were 5 editors on each shift, a day shift and a night shift, and then like 15 loggers because everything was shot on mini DV back then. Oh my God. But the thing was like, and I kept the job. I'm so pissed. When I first got hired, the story was the whole team was out in Arizona because of spring training and they're starting the season. I hate baseball. I mean, whatever. But now I hate baseball. But they put me up in a hotel. They flew me up from San Francisco to Mesa or whatever. I forget where we were in Arizona, Scottsdale, I think. And then they gave me a per diem. It was like $50 a day. Okay, great. It was a non-union job, but they at least gave us that. However, like we worked in this production office with no windows, and everything that had windows had to be blacked out for the color correction artist, colorist. And I was doing 18-hour days in editing. Like I would get up, I would shower, I would go. I would not be able to eat sometimes, or I'd be like eating really quick at a desk because whatever food they had, there was no time to go out and get food and use my per diem. So if I showed up at 8 in the morning, I might be editing or working with the editors till 10, 11 at night. And then I got to go back to the hotel room. All the restaurants are closed. And this was, I think I was there for like 2 weeks. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I went home. I went back to the hotel after a long day, and I took a shower because it was so gross, and I blacked out in the shower. Like everything went black. I fell. The water's still running. I woke up in the bottom of the tub, and I was so freaked out because I was alone, and I realized like they don't care that this is happening to me, and I'm not a lead editor. Like I'm just basically like a supporting assistant. And I was young too. I was like 27, 28. So if I couldn't handle the physical strain of 18-hour days with no solid food, right? Really. And then there was the drug use on, I mean, there was a lot of drug use in the office, drinking, and it was unsustainable. So I think on that job, after I blacked out, I was like, this is not what I want to do. This is not how I want to edit. Um, but I love editing. So for me, that meant, giving up on maybe a career dream just from this, maybe not just this one experience, because it was still like I was one of the only women in the office. How am I able to complain? I'm not going to get another opportunity, right? So, and I was a good editor, but I just decided to edit for myself. Now I'm like doing my own work and winning awards, and it's way more satisfying, even though I'm not getting paid to make my work. I'm making money working with students and trying to prepare them so that they can go into a different industry. Hopefully, it's progressed from where I'm, but I'm not even that old. Like it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready to make a damn feature. I'm gonna make a narrative feature next because I think I can do it. I know I can do it, right? I can do this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story though, because I think that really speaks to like when I wrote this question, I was like the time pressure and what we put on ourselves. Exactly. And how do you keep that rapport and that energy and kind of keep going. So because I think we need to keep post-production being a creative space and not just this like grunting kind of button pushing, trying to turn stuff around, make terrible decisions because you're like, I could do this or that, but I've got like literally 5 minutes to do this, so I'm doing quick and the quickest, dirtiest.
Yeah.
Why not just take all the time you need for something? TV has big budgets, they can bring in all the people they need and figure out how to do it differently. But that does take the people who are being hired for those jobs to be able to stand up and say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not taking this.
Totally. And then, yeah, like thinking back to blacking out in the shower and like who did that benefit? You know, the guy who ran the company that I blacked out for is now the head of Paramount. He did fine.
Yeah.
I'm now, I got discouraged early. I don't think he probably had to black out in a hotel bathroom to get where I don't know, like now I sound bitter. But like,
Well,
yeah,
that's,
the reason I never wanted to live in Los Angeles because like that's just so much, I feel like. Anyways.
yeah, oof, that's it. I'm sure there are people who will be glad to read a story like that so they can kind of
Yeah,
know.
it pissed off the owner of Paramount or whatever his name is, Brian Robbins, Mike
Oh,
Tolan, Mike Tolan, Brian Robbins. I don't know. Do you know these?
I don't know his name.
I don't know. All right, that's who they were. But yeah, that would be interesting. Like,
Where are they today? Wow.
yeah, head of Paramount, um, Tolan Robbins. Yeah, I'm totally curious. Okay, thanks, dog. Just fell out. Brian Robbins, current CEO of Paramount Global. Yeah, fascinating.
No, and he probably didn't even know. Was he the
Oh
editor?
no, yeah, no, he wasn't there. No, he was like running this small production company that produced the show for ESPN. So we
Yeah.
never, I think I don't know. I mean, we heard him on a phone conference call once. I mean, there was always like that executive oversight that was unspoken and unseen, and we were really in the trenches doing this. And I don't know, everyone's got a role to play, but we never really interacted with them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow. Well, I guess this leads to the next question, which is about career sustainability as a gig economy. So that's kind of a perfect example of like a worst case scenario where you've got the carrot. You're like, I want this on my resume. I want this. I want where this is going to go.
Mhm.
Like, am I willing to do these things? And you drew a line, but
Mm.
now that things are moving internationally and it's such a gig economy, like how do you help? I mean, you talked a lot about this too, like helping filmmakers find internships and making sure those internships are decent. What other things do you have other advice for people kind of starting in this because so many gigs are moving internationally, a lot of posts too.
Oh, oh gosh, yeah, and that was always the thing in visual effects was like, there were people, all of our animators and compositors, and very few people were on staff, mostly like the engineering staff, to keep the server and networks running, the render farm and stuff. But yeah, they were making good money, but they were having to go to London or they were having to go to Vancouver and like India. That like there's all these different centers of visual effects production, New Zealand, and it kind of shifts around based on the productions and I guess incentives. I don't know if they're international incentives.
Either.
I don't work internationally, and gosh, it's almost like a distant dream for a lot of my students who grow up, on a farm
Yeah.
outside Nashville, like an hour outside Nashville. Um, I don't know, trying to get students to even go to film festivals is a hard sell because they're like, why would I go? I can just YouTube. And
Yeah.
so yeah, international gig economy. I do. Have you heard of well, Seed and Spark? Emily Best developed this crowdfunding to build independence
Yeah.
seminar, which is great. And I kind of worked that into my web series production class as a way to encourage people to, invest in themselves. While you're doing things for other people, you can build a demo reel or portfolio of like, your work as an editor, but um, keep making your own work. And if I don't know, build up that audience, then you can parlay that into some sort of leverage, like Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl I talk about in class, and I show how the trajectory of that series and how it started with just a really great writer. Like, Issa Rae is a great writer and she's funny. And so she didn't have that technical capacity early on, like it's out of focus, she's crossing the line, but it makes you laugh. And so halfway through season 1 she gets a crowdfunding campaign funded, and all of a sudden she's able to hire crew. And I feel like I'm really focused more locally than globally, I guess. Like I'm invested in building that confidence in my students to tell stories about their experience and they grow up in this region.
Yeah.
And I'm also really interested in like encouraging my queer students and students of color to like really put their voices out there because they're so dominated, especially in this region. I know it's an issue all over the world, but like in the South, like we just haven't heard some of these stories. And I think so I would like to export internationally, then send students, export our stories out there. But I would be thrilled if students got to work internationally if they can that wiped all of the footage from Pixar's servers. But since the animator had been pregnant and took the source files home, they were able to reconstruct the film.
Wow.
You ever heard that story?
No, I'm gonna look that one up. Oh my God.
Google that story. A woman saved Toy Story.
It's a backup, a home backup.
A pregnant woman saved Toy Story and saved Pixar. Isn't that awesome?
I hope she got a big old bonus from them.
I hope so.
Saving lives, save the ship.
Well, maybe there's something to be said as a backup strategy.
Yeah, right? Send it home with everybody.
Send it home.
Good Lord. Wow, that's cool. I'm gonna look that one up. Wow.
Yeah.
Are there in Nashville, are there professional organizations that students can join or people in the business join? Like you mentioned the unions before, like you were in a union. Do they,
Yeah,
for the music industry, do they have other organizations or?
there's a lot of I mean, AES, Audio Engineering Society, is very active in Nashville. I think a lot of people in there are more focused towards music, but we're seeing some students coming through recording industry program at our university that are increasingly interested in post-production audio work. It's limited here in Nashville, I think, and definitely more music focused. When I was in California, there was like Final Cut Pro Editors Group and things like that where they would bring in guest speakers. And in Nashville, really, there's not much happening. there's a Nashville Filmmakers Guild, which is a nonprofit organization, community organization. I think we've got like 5,000 members on our Facebook group, maybe more now. But we're all like, mostly independent filmmakers or industry professionals that are connecting there. And they used to do mixers once a month. We go meet people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do like training on like PA practices to help students get up and running. But yeah, I don't know. This city, Nashville's got a lot of potential. There's a lot happening here. Um, and who knows where it's gonna go, but we're becoming like a tech center. It's kind of
Mm,
odd. Like Oracle's coming, gonna
wow.
bring a ton of jobs. Like they bought a whole bunch of acres on the riverfront downtown. Um, I don't know. Yeah. I just want to make my gay movies. That's what I'm doing.
All right. Last question, last one. And again, we talked about this quite a bit. You just kind of even said it, it's about skills and, this is kind of what we were talking about, Ryan, too, like what do emerging filmmakers need? There's that old school, find your niche. It's kind of the story with the Everything Everywhere All at Once crew. They just were like making their own stuff that they liked and
Yes.
come up with.
Yes. And that movie was so fun.
Yes.
Love that film. And so creative in its techniques, like how they came up with those visualizations. I don't know if I would have come up with that, but it's always fun to watch a film where you're like, "Wow, that's well done."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know if reality television breeds that in us, the risk taking.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, wow. What was the question again? God, my
Oh,
age.
like you kind of said it, like, should students be generalists?
Oh,
Should
one or the
they
other, or
figure out
yeah.
their own stuff and just make their own films and have a reel? Like,
hmm it really, I really am focused on cultivating every student's voice. I know it sounds really cheesy and lame, like cliche, but it depends on what your goals are. Like when I was a kid, my I loved going to movies, but I never saw movies about gay kids, living their lives. Like I was having crushes on women or young, I mean, people my age who were women, and I'm just like, am I weird? Like I obviously must be like not part of the club because I don't see stories about myself. So my motivation as a filmmaker, or even to like go into all this, was really to make films that I wanted to see. Now, some people, I have other students who come in and like they have zero interest in politics or anything cultural. They just want to do cool stuff and make bullets fly in slow motion. And, that's great too, because then they get really deep into After Effects and then they'll end up going and getting a job and, you know, just no, you can't like sustain a career where you're never making a living, right?
yeah.
So there has to be a balance, but I don't see any shame in either approach, like going and working in the industry and not making your own work, or deciding I just want to make films in this area, and and I will fund that by working a day job, that hopefully is somewhat, pays the bills and is challenging and fun in other ways. Like your whole life doesn't have to be filmmaking.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It really depends on the student's goal, you
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
think I wanted to work in the industry early on. When I was younger, I was like, I just want to work my way up and be like the best at that craft. And then you know, you work on things that maybe you're not excited about. I worked on this movie called Feast of Love. I tell this to my students. This is a film written by Robert Benton, I believe, and he wrote Kramer versus Kramer, wrote and directed. Anyways, so this is a film with Greg Kinnear and Morgan Freeman, and I was on the sound editing crew. There was a sex scene every 15 minutes in this film. There's like, we were looking at it like, oh my God, like, am I even allowed to work on this? Like, I feel dirty. And you know, of course, everyone gets to have sex except Morgan Freeman in this film, which I thought was just a travesty of justice. Like, that guy's never getting a sex scene. But I will tell you, here's my R-rated story for your book. One of the last days of my work in the industry in San Francisco, when I decided I needed to leave and move to Nashville and build a different life for myself, the dialogue editor came to me one day on this crew for working on Feast of Love, and he's like, "I got a job for you today." I'm like, "Okay." He said, "Come on in." Let me show you. So he shows me the scene, and it's Rhoda Mitchell as the actress and another guy, I don't remember his name. And it's a sex scene in the film, and they're both fully nude. And on set, to get them in the mood, apparently they had played Grateful Dead in the background, and but not maybe aware or not caring that that sound would bleed all over the production track. And so the dialogue editor was like, "Look, here's the edit. Half of these shots have Grateful Dead in them, half of them don't. And so what we need to do is go through all the alt takes, which are the alternate audio recordings from every take from that shoot, and find like moments where the actors made a sound, and then find the alternate version of that without the Grateful Dead under it." So I spent many days on headphones, 12 hours a day, where the actor will go like, and I have to go through all these takes and find, and basically it was it was hard to listen to sex noises for 12 hours a day on headphones. And also at the end of it, you go, well, now I made this sex much more believable, but what is happening in my soul? I decided that my time would be better spent writing and directing my own work and elevating voices in the South that are underrepresented. So, but I know if I had stayed and worked in the industry, I probably would have had a really awesome and fun career too. But now I have a kid and a dog.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are trade-offs.
Hey, tenure, sabbaticals, summers off, these are all really good
They're
things.
good things. Like, I think this is how we can survive as working artists in our culture in America.
Healthcare, you know.
If we were in Canada, we're going to apply for government funding, but our government's not funding queer work or any kind of work other than, you know. Anyways, yeah, it's fun, huh?
That was a great story to end on too, because
Right.
somebody's going to hear it and go, I never want to do that. And someone's going to hear it and go, that sounds like a great job.
Yeah.
And it really is just, you know,
Totally.
choose where you want to go and what you think you want to do. And you have to know the industry though, before you can start making those choices.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a really fun career. Like, it's never the same every day unless it's documentary editing for
Even that,
months and months.
even that changes. Oh my
Even
Lord.
that changes, but yeah, yeah. At some point, you got to finish the film, right? Hit export. Typically,
And then you make a few changes and you export again. And you make
exactly. I got a Nashville Film Festival. They're like, your DCP has to be uploaded by August 28th. I'm like, I got till August 27th. Like, boop, 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 boop. Like, I redid the titles. I sent it off.
Wow.
So yeah, films are never done. They're only abandoned, right?
That's right. That is the classic line. Oh my gosh. Allie, thank you so much for your
Great,
sharing.
Melanie.
Wow. How
You're
did
welcome.
you go to UVFA this year?
Oh, the MFA, it's starting in 2 years. We're doing final approvals, and then there's a year of marketing, and then.
Oh no, did you go to UVFA conference?
Oh, did I go I'm sorry, I thought you said MFA. Yes, I did go to UFVA. It was super fun. It was in Cleveland, and my leg is still healing, so I had this big boot on, so I was like dragging my leg around downtown Cleveland. The dorms were like 8 blocks from the conference site. I didn't realize. And it was hot, but it was fun. Yeah, it was a good attendance there.
Leg. Are you better now?
Yeah, I'm
Kind
better now. I fell off a mountain at a big queer fertility festival.
Oh, so you had a good reason.
Oh, it's such a good story, but not for the book.
Well, oh wait, I'll stop the recording. Here we go. Stop that.